Good afternoon. This is Rand Sperry, Vice Chair of the Orange Catholic Foundation, coming to you on our podcast that the Business and Ethics Conference puts on once a week. And I am the co-host of it, along with Randy Redwitz. And we are both the co-chair of this event, which unfortunately wasn't held this year, but it was already booked for next year, April 14th, 2021, and we look forward to seeing everyone at that conference. Today we have Father Steve Sallot as our guest. He's with the Diocese of Orange and rector of Queen of Angels here in Newport Beach. But at this time, Father Steve, I would like to ask you, one of the neat things and unique things about you is you were born and raised here in Orange County. I do know that, but maybe you could tell us a little about where you were raised and where you went to high school and so on. And I understand it's your 40th anniversary of your ordination. So
yes, congratulations
on that. So just kind of get us up to speed. What have you been doing for the last 40 years?
Well, thanks, Randy and Rand. Great to see you guys again, even if you are from the other side of Santa Margarita. That's okay.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
That's right.
No, just real quickly, I was born and raised in Santa Ana. My parents were school teachers, and then I have an older sister and two younger brothers, and that kept my mother busy, so she retired from teaching after about 10 years and took care of us. And my parents retired in the 80s and continued to live in the house that my father built back in 1948. He was a carpenter's son and a machine shop teacher and had a machine shop, so he was very good with his hands. And so that's the life of little Santa Ana that I grew up in the same house. And now my brother and I are co-owners of that house, and I hope to retire there someday. I could say very simply, I never thought 40 years would go by that fast. I think anybody in our age bracket kind of could attest to that. It really has gone by incredibly fast. But I went to Mater Dei High School and then went to UCI for a short time, went to the seminary, St. John's in Camarillo, and then went through the theologate there, the graduate division. And then I've had probably in 40 years, probably the widest variety of jobs or ministries that a parish priest could have in our diocese. I was in parish work. Then I was asked to go work at Mater Dei for 10 years, which I did. Initially reluctantly, but as it turned out, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And then I went back to a parish at St. Edward's in Dana Point and bumped into Randy again, and we got to work together for almost 12 years, especially in the finances of the parish and the mission of the parish. And then was asked when Bishop Van came to the diocese to be his vicar general, which I did for 5 years. And now I'm back at Queen of Angels. And then in January, took on a second position as interim president of Mater Dei High School for a year and a half until we find a new president. So it's kind of a fun thing. It's no different than you guys raising a family, being married, and having a career. And how do you balance all of that? Sometimes you do it remarkably well, and sometimes things drop. So I would find trying to do 2 full-time jobs, some days you can hit it out of the park and some days not so much.
So I'm going to hand it over to Randy in a second, but I have a question for you because this last Saturday I went to a high school graduation at Aquinas High School in San Bernardino. It's one of my little pet projects for a friend. I've got some scholarship kids there, and one of them graduated, and he's discerning whether or not to be a priest. He's been talking about it for the last couple of years, and he's going to go off to college, but a local college right now, but he's seriously considering it. And so I thought I'd ask you, how did you come to that point in your life when you decided to be a priest? And after that, then Randy's got a few questions.
Sure. Just real quickly, I was in high school and first part of college. I kind of discerned, I looked around to say, who seems to enjoy what they're doing? I looked around and said, who seems to be happy in what they're doing? And quite honestly, it was priests and religious sisters that seemed to be excited about getting up every day and doing whatever they were doing. And I kind of hung around them a little bit and started to work in my local parish to to kind of find out what their life was a little bit more about. And I still remember being on a retreat, and there was a priest from UCI who was the chaplain there, and I worked up my courage and finally went in, because I thought, gosh, they're going to laugh at me when I tell them I'm thinking of becoming a priest. I thought they'd laugh at me. And so I asked the priest, I said, so why did you become a priest? And he looked at me with a straight glance and he said, it was a heck of a lot better than selling Hoover vacuum cleaners. So that was not the response I expected. But I think what he meant underneath that, we talked a little bit more, and he says, do what stirs your heart and gives you passion. And so for me, priesthood for 40 years, certainly it's had its ups and downs and wonderful moments and difficult moments, but it's the stuff that drives me to get up every day and try to keep living the gospel. So I would say for a guy like that, you know, hang around people who are working in church ministry, because otherwise it's all theoretical. You can read all the books you want and think about it, but you got to kind of act in that environment. So go to college, but always put aside some time to be actively engaged in ministry. And you get a sense, does that stir your heart or not?
Good advice. I will let him know.
Fantastic. You know, Father, I've been with you for many years, and it's been such a joy and an honor. And you really underplay your transition from point to point, from Mater Dei to St. Edward's, because I know, and I want to share this with everyone, you have moved from some very difficult situations to other difficult situations. And it's not simply moving from a parish to a parish, but you've moved dramatically from a high-profile high school to a parish that was in desperate need of new leadership and very troubled and traumatic, and you did such an incredible job there in the time you were at St. Edward's, and then moved into a very dynamic role as second in command of the diocese, and there was a lot of turmoil there, and calmed that down, and then theoretically you went into a calmer position with Our Lady Queen of Angels, and hopefully it is, but then you step into the role of the lead of Mater Dei again, you know, and so it's you know, I wrote in my notes to you, it's either a glutton for punishment or you're just you're really expressing your God-given talents, which are just so incredibly full and giving. So can you just amplify a little bit on what I'm saying?
You know, this is probably not the best place to begin. This probably doesn't sound too religious, but I remember telling my dad when I was about 19 that I was thinking about going into the seminary, and I asked him his opinion, and he looked straight at me. And of course, he did have a little dry sense of humor. He said, look at all the other idiots that have done it. If they can do it, so can you. And so that was his great word of encouragement. But I think what he meant by that, I think, was that give it a try. You know, all you can, you know, the worst thing you can do is get it wrong, but you might get it right. And so when I was asked to go to St. Edward's, I knew that was not going to be a pretty situation. But I thought, well, the best I can do is go down and give it my best. And so if I fail at it, then I fail at it. Taking on 2 jobs, I really, really did it, quite honestly, because Pat Murphy, who had been the president there for 20 years, and we had worked together for 10 years before that when I was at Mater Dei, I have great respect for him. And this would allow him to kind of move on to kind of the end of his career and in a whole other setting. And I wanted to honor that and respect that. And I really said yes to this dual role because he said, I think you can do it. And I would ask you, you know, to seriously consider it. And that was really the big motivator for me. The other thing was Mater Dei is in a time of transition. So I didn't see myself as being the permanent president. We really need somebody with, you know, probably 20 years less, or I would say 20 years younger, to kind of take that on. Somebody who's in mid-career, not towards the end of their career. So I said, I can be a placeholder. I can go back and keep the pieces together and help create a plan. I can do that. And so far, that's what we've been doing.
That's fantastic.
You know, but I kind of figure I don't go looking for these things, but somehow they find me. And so I have to kind of believe that it's somehow the work of the Holy Spirit that kind of puts those opportunities in my way.
Yeah. You know, it's an attitude issue, and I'm sure Rand, I think, and I can attest to the fact that if you want to put yourself out there, there's tremendous opportunities to help and to participate. And you know, you've taken your talents and just made a gold mine out of every place that you've been, and it's so incredibly wonderful.
Thank you.
In that regard. And you keep your humor about you all the time. You know, it's just, that's what's super special about you, for sure.
Yeah. And the great thing of it is, honestly, just like you guys, you know, you have your companies, but if you don't, you know that if you don't have the right team around you or a good team around you, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And that's where I've really been blessed, is that I've had good groups of people to work with. Going back to Mater Dei, what a great group of administrators to work with. And the parish, I can say for the same thing here, even though we had to furlough half of our parish staff, those who have remained have really stepped up and really done good things.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it comes to mind, my next question. We brought you on because you were the master of ceremonies of the Business and Ethics Conference last year. You did a terrific job, by the way. And but the real reason that I was excited that you came on is because basically we've been on a roll interviewing CEOs in Orange County. And frankly, in my opinion, you are one of those CEOs. When you look at the jobs you've had, running Mater Dei and running parishes, that is like being a CEO. And of course, you know, the number 2 job at the diocese, these are tough jobs with a lot of people. You have to have the right team and you have to have the right personality to pull that off. And you do have the personality, as Randy was saying. In fact, my grandkids just love you. I honestly don't know what they see in that, but
I don't either.
They just love Father Steve, and you know, they're in kindergarten and pre-K.
Yeah.
But
well, they're young yet. They don't know me very well.
That's it. But, so tell us a little bit more how it has been going in this pandemic. You've got 3 areas I'd like to hear about, which is the parish school, and Mater Dei. With, you know, the shutdown that happened in the middle of March. How did that go for you, and what have you done to I guess recover in terms of the cost, because it's revenue's been lost in all these different areas, or potential revenue, and how do you see yourself pulling out of this with these 3 entities?
Well, I would say, probably to answer that quickly, how do I see ourselves pulling out of it? Not easily, you know, because there's still a lot of unknowns. We still don't know where all of this is going to go. If there's a new spike, I think there's a lot of kind of thin veil over where the economy is going to go. And, you know, with all this infusion, that's not going to last. And so at some point, we got to quit kicking the can down the road. And I think when things open up more, the economy will show itself a little bit more, unfortunately, in a negative fashion than what I would certainly hope for. But I think going from shock, which was, you know, about March 13th, all of a sudden we go from next Sunday, this week we're shutting the church down.
Right.
The kids aren't coming back to school. We announced it about 2:00 in the afternoon. And initially the kids, I could hear the cheer at the school. You know, the kids were excited. They go, oh my God, you know, and we can go home. You know, this is at Mater Dei. Although you probably thought it would be Santa Margarita, but they probably cheered there too. But after a while, it really became kind of a grind, because you create one plan and then it's got to shift depending on what we were allowed to do. I think the remarkable thing is, in all 3 settings, as much as it was different, how it affected people differently, people really stepped up. I mean, the teachers here at our parish school, they were already kind of bred into kind of a technological format. So pretty much from about the 4th grade up, they already were using iPads and they already had that technology. Mater Dei had been using it, you know, not to this extent, but the teachers were comfortable with it. So were the kids. So I think, you know, all things being equal, the transition went remarkably well. We ended up having 6 graduations in the parking lot. about
wow.
every hour and a half. And that's how we did it.
Wow.
And people were saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do it that way. But we made a decision based on the information we had, and we moved forward, and it turned out fine, But I would say in terms of our parish school, because this is a fairly strong economic area so far, we have a pretty full school coming back next year. We're going to increase our tuition assistance because I know families are obviously being affected by this. Modern day is a different story. We're down about 200 students this year, 178 as of today, as compared to the same time last year. We don't know exactly what that means, but we're reaching out. We're kind of trying to be very creative in our marketing. We're trying to compile more tuition assistance, so we're reaching out to donors and past parents and grandparents to say, how can you help us as we're going to go forward? I was just there this morning, and we're looking at how we're going to find $3 million in our operating budget. And that either comes from raking the budget, with a fine-tooth comb, or personnel. And those are not easy decisions to make. But that's part of the process that we're in. The parish was down about 40% in terms of our weekly collection, which is pretty, it can be really devastating. But we also furloughed probably 2/3 of our staff, which really helped us in terms of payroll. So we were able to kind of balance that out. And so we've been able to maintain kind of at a minimal ministry ebb our parish, and our budgets.
So ethically, how are you dealing with, there has to be parents, I'm just guessing now, but when you went to Zoom for school, and did parents both in the grade school and the high school want refunds? And if so, how did you deal with that? And then the next question is, are you coming back physically, the kids coming back physically at Mater Dei and at Queen of Angels? So that's the second question, but just wondering how it went with the
not so much here. Yeah, not so much at the parish school here, but the tuition at Mater Dei is $16,800, and that's just the base tuition. And we did have some parents request a refund, kind of prorate the tuition the second semester. What we did was we worked with them, in terms of stretching out their payments, things like that. But we really didn't renegotiate the agreement because we believed valid teaching was going on, even if it was via Zoom.
Well, right, you still had to pay the teachers.
Still got to pay the teacher, and that's about 85% of your budget.
That's
Is
right.
salaries and benefits. So we stayed with that. But we worked with families that were struggling, and we continued to do that. And remarkably, the collection rate for tuition has stayed pretty high.
Wow, that's great.
I've been so impressed during this time period. When you look at the Catholic school system, whether it's elementary or high school, the quality of the delivery of education during this very difficult time is so far ahead of the public school environment, so far superior. It's hard for me to understand how people could object to paying their tuition because the alternatives there are no alternatives of comparable value. So it's a very difficult issue for me to digest if people make that kind of complaint.
But they make it, and I think the other challenge is on the parent side is if you're working from home, you have to oversee your kids' education from home,
right.
And you're living at home. That's I could see where the tension could it kind of be exacerbated to the point of saying, and I'm paying for this,
Right. Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
That's true too.
Are they coming back?
Well, so far at the parish school, we have the school is almost full.
That's fantastic.
We're almost there. Mater Dei, we're still down almost a couple hundred. Pardon me? Oh, physically.
Yeah.
Good question. We don't know that answer yet, but we have two plans to be kind of, what would you say, dual instruction, which is part virtual, part physical. The challenge we have is, as you would know, working in schools, if you have 30 kids in a classroom and now you have to have 6-foot spacing
Yeah.
You can't put more than about 14 kids in the classroom, and we're not going to be able to make the classrooms bigger. We can't create double the number of classrooms. So what we're going to have to do is 1,000 kids on campus. One approach is 1,000 kids on campus in the morning. They do all their intense learning, academics then, and then we have 1,000 kids in the afternoon. And Wednesday would be kind of that break day to kind of everybody catches up. The teachers get all their extra things done that they're committed to. Sports obviously would take place in the afternoon, but we don't even know where we're going to have a season yet, a fall season.
Right.
So, but we had looked at, one day we'd have 1,000 kids on campus all day, then the next day have the other 1,000. But what we've come up with is more of a split day where we have 1,000 kids in the morning, 1,000 kids in the afternoon.
Yeah. Wow.
But kids need that physical. I think they do. I mean, all of us who've we've been zoomed out. Do you notice? I mean, for me, an hour on the Zoom is more mentally taxing for me than it is to be an hour in a meeting face to face. It's just something about, you can read more, you get more of a sense of what's going on when you're in a physical meeting. And I think it's true with education. There's lots of ways that kids learn, and it's hard. Like we're even saying, like, how is a teacher going to teach in a mask all day? There's so many visual cues and physical cues, and that's going to be a challenge. Teaching behind a mask or behind a face shield, that's going to be challenging.
The nuns that taught me in grade school did that.
Yeah, but they had a yardstick in their hand when they saw you.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure.
It was only a half a yard by the time they got done with it hitting me. So I think Randy has another question for you.
Sure.
No, I'm pretty well questioned out here, Father, with you, but you just have an incredible career, and even just talking with you now, your grasp of the number sets from the schools and the parish, I'm very, very impressed with you.
Yeah.
You just have you are a CEO in many regards, and accomplishing
but
things.
The gift is, Randy, and you're in real estate, Rand, and Randy, you're in the accounting and auditing business, and all of those things involve numbers, but it really underneath it involves people.
Yeah.
And hopefully making their lives better. And I would say, for me coming back this last weekend, we only had 100 people in church. That's all we were allowed to do. I did fudge a little bit, but I wouldn't give those numbers away. I don't want to be accused. But of anything.
This is being recorded.
I know. But the truth of it is, I've been celebrating Mass now for 12 weeks looking at a camera as if it were a person. Right. And it was so great to have people back. I got up and just kind of welcomed everybody back at the 6 Masses we had. And people were really excited to be back. Yeah. We had people crying when they came to communion. They haven't received communion in 3 months. And for me, if you say, what's a highlight in 40 years, as difficult as this has been, the welcoming back makes it all worth it, and people's response to that. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that this is going to continue to get better. But however it shakes out, I go, we're going to find a way through it. We really, whether it's at the school or here at the parish.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
you've got good building blocks there, and you've got a strong outlook, and that's the best you can do, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, both those institutions, the Queen of Angels and Mater Dei, are lucky to have you as their leader. Not only are you smart, you're personable, and you have a good time, you laugh, you ride a motorcycle. You forgot to mention your motorcycle. So have you been riding that?
Well, I don't want any mothers. I don't want anybody. I don't want to influence anybody's children that they should do such destructive things. But yeah, I still ride, and I have the broken bones to show it.
Well, I have to tell you. Oh, go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Father, I remember that one meeting where you came rushing in, and you'd ridden from like Ventura down to Orange County, and you were telling us about riding in the center lane and all that. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know.
I know. I never like cutting lanes, but I go, I'll never get to that meeting unless I do.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Randy, I'll tell you one quick story with myself and Father Steve. I was up in Sacramento waiting for a plane, and and there was a guy sitting across from me, and I was on my phone or whatever, and I got off my phone, and I hadn't looked up, but the voice sounded just like Father Steve.
Oh.
And I kind of look around and didn't notice him, but I said, gosh, that guy just sounds like Father Steve. It was him.
Oh.
He had been on vacation, I believe, for about a week or so.
Yeah.
You were doing a motorcycle ride, and he kind of looked like people from staying indoors for the last 3 months with the beard down to here, and he was all disheveled looking, and he needed a haircut, and he had a hat and bandana on, and I mean, I just didn't recognize him. So he not only knows how to work hard, he knows how to play hard.
Yeah,
I do.
He does indeed. He does indeed.
Well, I want to thank you. Our time's up, and it was certainly a pleasure having you as our guest this afternoon. And God bless and keep up the great work. And we both wish you another 40 years.
Thank you. It was a pleasure chatting with you guys.
Good. Congratulations, Father, for that. Amazing.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye-bye.